Welcome in. It's so great to have you here with us today.
Yeah, I'm really glad you're joining us.
We have a truly fascinating mission for this deep dive. We're going to be exploring a roadmap that claims to offer profound, lasting personal and spiritual transformation.
Right.
And we are looking at this specifically through the lens of our current age. This era of constant, relentless digital distraction.
Which I think we could all relate to, honestly.
Oh, absolutely. To do this, we are pulling from a really powerful source document. It's titled Called Out of Darkness to Light.
Yeah, and it's a dense text, but we're focusing on some specific parts today.
Exactly. We're going to be zooming in on its striking epilogue, which is titled The Light That Outlives the Platform, along with 4 highly detailed, actionable appendices.
Because the author really wants to turn theory into practice here.
Right. And to help ground us, we also have a vivid source image that we're going to use as a visual anchor for everything we talk about today.
It's a gorgeous image, too.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this. Can you set the stage for us visually?
I would love to. So the visual backdrop for our deep dive today has shifted to reflect this source image. I want you to picture a breathtaking sunrise.
Okay.
There is this brilliant sunburst cresting right over a jagged mountain peak, and its rays are physically piercing the sky.
It's super dramatic.
It is. But then, below that mountain, there's a thick, heavy layer of fog rolling through the mid-ground valley.
Just totally obscuring the bottom of the mountain.
Exactly. But right up close, in the foreground, the landscape is completely alive. It's covered in these vibrant yellow wildflowers catching the morning light.
It's a stunning image.
It really is, but it also perfectly mirrors the central theme the author is trying to convey today.
Right, this whole concept of light breaking through the heavy, obscuring fog of modern noise.
Yes, the fog is the perfect metaphor for where the source material starts.
And the epilogue opens with this massive provocation, right? It asks you, the reader, a question that kind of stops you in your tracks.
It really does.
The author writes, and I'm quoting here, "What if the greatest threat to your spiritual life is not persecution, but distraction?
Yeah.
What if the danger is not open hostility, but quiet dilution?"
Quiet.
That phrase, it just really sticks with you.
It does, and it connects directly to that rolling fog in our visual backdrop. The author provides a really razor-sharp analysis of our current era.
Because the fog isn't just an accident, it's the environment we live in.
Exactly. They point out that we live in a world where influence is strictly measured in clicks. Credibility is measured in followers. Value is determined by visibility.
It's all metrics.
All metrics. We're surrounded by this endless stream of content. Artificial intelligence is accelerating production to a pace we've frankly never seen before.
Right.
Attention spans are shrinking, and as a result, the source material argues that genuine authenticity is becoming incredibly rare.
The fog is thick.
So thick, it obscures the path forward, and it makes it so easy to lose your bearings.
And I think when you are lost in that digital fog, the natural human instinct is to reach for more information.
Oh, for sure. You
You think another deep dive, another article, or another book will save you.
just one more piece of data.
Exactly. But the author proposes a really interesting paradigm shift here. They argue that transformation, not information, is the currency of eternity.
I love that quote.
In their view, it's not about acquiring more knowledge. It's about fundamentally being changed by it.
What's fascinating here is how the source material grounds that transformation.
How so?
Well, it doesn't leave it as some abstract, floaty concept. The author outlines what they call 4 unshakable realities that act as an anchor for true spiritual success.
Okay, let's get into those.
Yeah, it's worth spending some time on these because they really form the bedrock of the entire argument. First, the author talks about an assurance anchored in the gospel.
Right, and to put that in perspective, we usually look for assurance in incredibly fragile places, don't we?
Oh, constant.
We look for it in job performance reviews, or, how many likes a post gets, or our social standing.
Which changes daily.
Exactly. The author is suggesting that this first reality, this gospel assurance, is about having a foundational security that doesn't fluctuate based on a bad Tuesday or a critical comment online.
Precisely. It's an unmoving starting point, which leads directly into their second reality,
Which is?
an identity secured in Christ.
Okay.
In a modern context, our identities are often entirely wrapped up in what we do for a living or how we present ourselves to the world.
Our personal brands.
Right, our personal brand. The author is arguing that if your identity is secured in something transcendent, in this case, their theological framework of being in Christ,
Mm.
then the fog of modern cultural expectations can't actually touch who you fundamentally are.
That makes a lot of sense. And the third reality they list is formation built through disciplined devotion.
Yeah, this one is huge.
I found this really interesting because it pushes back against the idea that spiritual growth just happens accidentally.
Or through random bursts of inspiration.
Right. You don't just wake up one day fully transformed without putting in the reps.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is all about habits. The author is making the case that you are continually being formed by whatever you give your attention to.
So if you give your attention to the endless scroll.
You are being formed by the fog. Exactly.
Wow.
So this third reality is about consciously choosing disciplined practices, whether that's reading, reflection, or prayer, to actively form your character rather than passively letting the culture do it for you.
And that leads to the fourth and final reality they propose, which is a mission expressed through courageous obedience.
Because it can't just stay internal.
Right. This isn't just about sitting alone in a room being spiritual. It's about taking that internal transformation and actually doing something with it in the real world.
Even when the fog makes it difficult to see the immediate results.
Exactly. So these four realities, assurance, identity, formation, and mission, they are essentially the stakes driven into the ground that the author believes will keep you from being swept away by the cultural current.
So if those four realities are the anchor, how does the author suggest we actually measure if we are secured to them?
That is the million-dollar question. Because the source material pushes back hard against the way we usually track progress.
Right.
This brings us to Appendix 1, which is full of discussion questions designed to totally disrupt conventional beliefs.
It really turns things upside down.
It challenges you to measure your spiritual maturity not by how much you are doing, but by how deeply you understand your identity.
Which raises an important question, one the author directly poses. When was the last time you paused to assess your spiritual trajectory rather than just your activity level?
Trajectory versus activity, that is so good.
We get so caught up in the activity, doing this, attending that, volunteering here, that we lose sight of the actual direction we are moving.
Right.
The source material makes a profound assertion here. It says that spiritual disciplines are meant to be relational pathways, not legalistic burdens.
Which is such a vital distinction. If you are just checking boxes to prove your worth, the author suggests you are entirely missing the point.
You're just managing behavior.
Exactly. To help shift that mindset, Appendix 2 provides some really fascinating reflective exercises. And these are designed to bridge the gap between that high-level theory and your actual daily reality.
Yes, and one of the core problems these exercises are trying to solve is something the author calls fragmentation.
I love this concept. Let's break this down for everyone.
So, to understand fragmentation, think of it like having 50 different tabs open on your computer browser at the same time.
Sounds like my laptop right now.
Right. You have your work tab, your family tab, your social media tab, and your spiritual life tab.
Okay.
Because they are all running simultaneously but completely separate from one another, your system's battery is just draining rapidly. You are passionate and convicted on Sunday morning, but by Tuesday afternoon, that spiritual tab is buried, and you are completely lost to the distraction of the rest of your week.
That is a brilliant way to picture it. You have conviction without structure.
Exactly.
So, the author introduces a tool called the awakening narrative to act as a sort of system reboot.
A way to close the tabs.
Yes. It asks you to write out your story in 3 parts: before, the encounter, and after.
Simple, but effective.
Very. It forces you to close all those draining tabs and look at the tangible narrative of transformation in your life. You have to articulate what actually changed.
And alongside that narrative reboot, there is another exercise called the lies versus truth chart.
This one is super practical.
It is. The premise here is that you actively identify recurring lies you tell yourself. For instance, the lie that I must perform perfectly to belong in this community.
A very common one.
And you physically write out a specific truth from the author's biblical framework to counter it.
You know, when I was reading that, it immediately reminded me of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Oh, that's a great connection.
Yeah. For anyone unfamiliar, CBT is basically a psychological approach where you identify negative or inaccurate thought patterns, And you consciously reframe them with objective realities so you can respond to situations more effectively.
Right, you're challenging your own brain.
Exactly. The author is essentially applying that exact same mechanism, but strictly through the lens of spiritual identity. You are literally rewiring your fragmented thought processes.
That is a perfect parallel. When you do the hard work of writing out your awakening narrative or mapping your lies against truth, you are actively integrating your life.
You're pulling it all together.
You are pulling the pieces together so you aren't a fragmented person anymore. The spiritual tab isn't just one of 50 open on your browser. It becomes the operating system itself.
I love how actionable that is. And that integration is where the rubber really meets the road, which leads us beautifully into Appendix 3, practical applications.
This is my favorite section.
Me too. One of the most surprising parts of the source material for me was that it doesn't just offer inspiration. It offers a very real 90-day growth blueprint.
It is taking all this aspiration and turning it into a tangible strategy.
And the specific frameworks they provide are incredibly practical. Take the decision lens, for example.
Right.
The author challenges you to take a pending decision in your life. Maybe it's a career move, a relationship boundary, or even just how to spend your weekend, and filter it strictly through gospel principles.
Let's pause there for a second because gospel principles can sound a bit like insider jargon depending on your background.
That's a fair point.
Based on the source material, what specific principles are we talking about using as a filter here?
Great clarification. In the context of this document, they are referring to principles like grace, unmerited forgiveness, radical generosity, and self-sacrificial love.
Okay, so countercultural metrics.
Completely. So instead of making a decision based on the principle of what gets me ahead the fastest, you use the decision lens to ask, does this choice align with the principle of extending grace? Does this reflect selflessness?
It fundamentally changes the criteria for how you navigate your daily choices.
That makes total sense. Another tool they offer in this section is the discipline tracker.
Which sounds a bit intense at first.
Right. At first glance, tracking your habits can feel a bit dry, but this isn't about guilt-tripping yourself into reading more.
No, not at all.
It is a 30-day tracker designed specifically so you can review it and figure out what is actually producing positive results in your life versus what just feels draining or like an obligation.
You are treating your spiritual health with the exact same intentionality you might treat your physical health or your financial budget.
And it is important to note that this framework extends outward into how you interact with others, too.
Right, it's not just internal.
The concept they call person of peace engagement is a prime example. The author advises against feeling the pressure to go out and aggressively argue people into your worldview.
Because that rarely works anyway.
It rarely works, and it just adds to the noise. Instead, they suggest identifying someone in your life who is already naturally receptive to deep spiritual conversations.
You build a relational bridge.
Yes, you listen. You don't apply argumentative pressure. You engage with patience and genuine curiosity.
Which is so refreshing because the author makes a really poignant observation here. They point out that the world isn't asking for louder people.
We definitely have enough loud voices online yelling through the digital fog.
We really do. The source material argues that the world is actually asking for real people. They use the phrase embodied truth.
Embodied truth, I like that.
They argue that embodied truth, actually living out these principles quietly and consistently, is the only thing that survives prolonged cultural pressure.
Shallow belief or emotional hype just isn't going to cut it.
That is the crux of their argument in Appendix 3. The authority of this lifestyle doesn't come from winning debates. It comes from an ancient, integrated approach to discipleship, where belief has to be physically embodied through disciplined practice.
Okay, so we've covered the mindset shifts and the practical frameworks, but here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
As we transition into Appendix 4, I have to admit I was a little skeptical at first.
Why is that?
Because this section essentially takes all this deep, profound spiritual growth and translates it into an actionable to-do list system.
A spiritual GTD, getting things done.
Exactly. It is basically a spiritual GTD system. But let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Sure.
Doesn't applying a highly structured, corporate-style executive workflow to our spiritual lives risk turning it back into exactly what the author warned about earlier?
You mean making it transactional?
Right. Doesn't it just become another legalistic burden or performance metric?
It is a totally valid concern, and it's one the author actually anticipates. The key difference here is the motivation behind the system.
Okay.
A legalistic burden is a to-do list you complete to earn your worth or prove you are good enough.
Checking the boxes.
Right. But the spiritual GTD system, the author outlines, is entirely about offloading mental weight.
Interesting.
It is designed to remove the friction that keeps you stuck in the fog, so you can actually walk in the freedom of that identity we talked about earlier.
Okay, that makes sense. It's a tool for clarity, not a scorecard.
Exactly. And it breaks down into 5 core principles. To really understand how this isn't just corporate jargon, let's walk through a hypothetical scenario.
Let's do it.
Imagine you are feeling a deep sense of spiritual burnout. You feel disconnected, overwhelmed by the noise of modern life, and you have this vague, heavy guilt that you should be doing better.
I think a lot of people know that feeling.
If you stay in that vague space, you are paralyzed.
Right, that mental clutter just sits there draining your battery.
So step 1 of the framework is capture everything. You take that vague feeling of burnout and you physically get it out of your head and onto paper.
Write it all down.
Write down every spiritual thought, regret, question, or intention floating around in your mind.
Honestly, just doing that probably relieves half the pressure.
It does.
Yeah.
Which leads to the second principle, clarify meaning. You have to turn those captured thoughts into concrete actions.
Give me an example.
If you wrote down, I feel completely isolated, that is an observation, not an action. You clarify it into a step. It becomes, text 2 friends to grab coffee this Thursday to talk about where I'm at.
I see. You take the ethereal and make it practical.
Exactly.
From there, the third principle is organize and prioritize. You look at that clarified action and sort it by context and urgency.
Like, is this a daily habit?
Right. Is this a long-term goal? Do I need to do this today or schedule it for the weekend?
Right. Then the fourth principle is review and reflect. This is where the trajectory comes back into play.
Tying it back to Appendix 1.
Yes. Once a week, you look back at your captured thoughts and the actions you took. You evaluate your progress, not to judge yourself, but to ask, is this system actually helping me reconnect, or am I still feeling burned out?
It allows you to pivot.
It gives you permission to adjust.
And finally, the fifth principle is act with intention. Because you have captured, clarified, organized, and reviewed, you aren't just reacting to the loudest notification on your phone anymore.
You have a plan.
You are consciously focusing on the high-impact actions that drive actual transformation.
And for those who are stepping into mentorship or guiding others, the author offers these advanced leadership audits based on this system too.
Oh, right.
There's the mental bandwidth audit, which is a brilliant way to prevent leaders from becoming overwhelmed by constantly offloading recurring thoughts and defining immediate actions for them.
And there's also the task to legacy alignment exercise, which I found totally fascinating.
That one is really powerful.
It asks you to evaluate your top daily tasks and ask a very sobering question. Do these actions actually reflect the core values and the legacy I want to leave behind?
It forces you to look at the long game.
It is a highly structured approach, and its main goal is to prevent the isolation and hesitation that usually derail our best intentions. It prevents you from getting stuck in the fog.
It gives you a compass and a map.
It really does.
If we connect this all back to the core premise, the author is providing a way to navigate a world that wants to keep you distracted.
Yeah.
They're saying that you don't have to be a victim of the shrinking attention spans or the algorithmic noise. You can build a system that protects your peace and your purpose.
As we wrap up this journey today, I want to quickly recap the mission of our deep dive. You, the listener, now have a roadmap in front of you.
A very clear one.
This source material gives you the tools to move from merely nodding your head in intellectual agreement to living a life of integrated, embodied action.
Moving from theory to practice.
And the author makes this stunning distinction to close out their argument. They state that while the secular world measures success by accumulation, their view of the kingdom measures success by multiplication.
That's a huge shift.
The world rewards visibility. God honors faithfulness.
Let's bring it back one last time to our visual source image.
The sunrise.
That breathtaking sunburst over the jagged mountain peak. The thick fog in the valley below. The vibrant wildflowers in the foreground.
It's a great anchor for all of this.
The author ends with a powerful promise that mirrors this scene. The darkness is real. The digital fog, the constant noise, the distraction, all of that is very real.
We feel it every day.
But the source material proposes that the light within is stronger. And if you use these tools, if you rely on these frameworks, you have a method to walk right through it.
So what does this all mean? The theory has been laid out, the systems have been provided, and the contrast between the world's noise and the author's vision of true spiritual depth is very clear.
Now it's up to the listener.
The question now is entirely about your own application. How might you apply these rhythms today?
Where do you start?
Right. Which of these tools, the decision lens, the discipline tracker, the lies versus truth chart, could you pick up and use to cut through the fog in your own life?
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that builds on everything we've unpacked from the author today.
Lay it on us.
We've established that the digital world's ultimate prize is visible influence. But this source material argues that true legacy is actually born from hidden faithfulness.
Okay.
So consider this. What if the most revolutionary thing you can do today isn't to speak louder, or to post more, or to fight for visibility in the fog?
Wow.
What if the most radical step you can take is to embrace utter anonymity in your good works? What if a completely hidden life of disciplined devotion and quiet love actually ends up radiating a light that outlasts every digital platform on Earth?
That is a profound place to leave it. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We will see you next time.